Sometimes all it takes is a single game or even a single moment to turn around an entire season. After a disastrous 1-4 start, it was a Monday night game against the Portland Trailblazers that turned everything around for Orlando.
Bounce left, the pass comes to Bane. Bane hoisting at the buzzer. He drills it! It's magic on a Monday night. 1:15.
Ever since this moment, things have been, dare I say, magical. The Orlando Magic were one of the most hyped teams going into this NBA season, only to start off their first 10 games going 4-6. However, following a win over the New York Knicks, Orlando has now won 9 of their last 12 games, including 6 of the last 7. They beat New York twice, they beat the Warriors with Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler, and lost by just 4 points in overtime to the Houston Rockets without Paolo. This team top to bottom looks and is playing different even from just the start of the season, and Jamal Mosley, somebody who was on the hot seat definitely at one point in the season, is looking more and more like one of the better coaches in the NBA. There have been quite a few changes over the last season. Before we talk about the players, I want to give some credit to Mosley in this overall shape of the team. In their last 11 games, Orlando has actually had the 10th ranked offense and the 3rd ranked defense. Possibly the biggest change in Orlando from last year might just be their pace. Last year, they were a bottom 5 transition team, scoring less than 20 points per game. This year, they are 6th in transition scoring, dropping 29 per game. Beyond this, Orlando is finally shooting the ball at a decent mark. Now, last year, they were dead last both in 3-point volume and efficiency. This year, they have gotten a little bit better, ranking around 20th in 3-point shooting. Outside of having a few more made threes, though, this is giving more room for guys like Franz Wagner and Paolo to operate. It's also crucial to keep in mind that this is factoring in that Desmond Bane had an incredibly slow start and Tyus Jones has barely even played. Even in the half court, there are some clear improvements, and a lot of this is coming from them having more possessions. Orlando is scoring roughly 11% more points this year with 8% more rebounds and assists. However, it's this aggressiveness and gritty play style that's coming through, as Orlando by far and away leads the NBA in free throw attempts. They are making 40% more free throws compared to last year. So Orlando is shooting the ball better, they're scoring more in transition, they're not turning the ball over, they're playing elite defense, and they're getting to the line more. Overall, this team just looks revitalized. And everything Orlando is doing this year is actually being less reliant on a single player compared to last season. Last year, due to injuries, both Paolo and Franz Wagner had a usage rate above 30%, and just 2 players on last year's roster averaged more than 4 assists per game. This year, that usage is more spread out, with no player averaging more than a 28% usage rate. Orlando has also definitely leaned to a more playmaker by committee style, with Paolo, Bane, Suggs, and Wagner all averaging around 4 assists per game. They're averaging more passes per game, they're playing at a higher pace, but they're also taking care of the ball quite well. In their last 11 games, they're averaging just around 14 turnovers per game, which is good for the 11th best in the league. Not to mention their rebounding rate, which isn't factored in by pace, has also jumped from being 15th to 7th best in the league, so that means this team is just crashing the boards better overall. Even Orlando's bench has shown some improvement, jumping from the 18th to 14th best bench in the league. However, tell me if this sounds familiar. In the last 11 or so games, Orlando has had around the 6th best bench in the NBA. Now, you can't talk about the Orlando Magic without mentioning Franz Wagner. Wagner has already become one of the most underrated star-level players in the league. He should have been an all-star once already, and while some of his stats have gone down, I could see him becoming one this season, and he's just overall been better than even last year. In the last 11, Wagner has had a net rating of around 11 points per 100 possessions, which is more than solid. He is the perfect all-around power forward. I promise you, he is a better playmaker than his 4 assists per game. He's having a career year rebounding-wise. He's getting to the line 2.5 more times per game. He averages about a stock and a half per game, and he has reached a league average true shooting percentage. His shooting from outside has improved, but he's still not great, shooting around 33% from 3. However, I do think he is better than this. On the year so far, he's around a 36% 3-point shooter when Banchero plays, just showing off his gravity, and Franz is a 40% shooter in the corner and shoots 38% on catch-and-shoot threes for this year and last year. Inside the arc, he's also been great. He's making about 4 attempts at the restricted arc per game, and he's in the 93rd percentile of post players this season, making him one of the most efficient post players in the league. Wagner's been great, but a huge spark for the Orlando Magic has been the emergence of Desmond Bane, as he has finally turned into the player that they traded for. Bane had an awful start to the season. During that 6-4 stretch at the beginning, he averaged just 10 points per game, but ever since hitting that buzzer beater, things have turned around for him. Counting their second game against the New York Knicks, Desmond Bane is now up to his usual averages of 22, 5, and 5 as of recent. He started the season shooting less than 30% from 3, but now he's up to 41% from 3 on the same volume. Bane is giving the Magic everything they need. He's someone who can score from anywhere on the court, make plays for others, rebound well at his size, give the offense consistency, and help maintain their defensive identity. And since we're talking about the defensive identity of the Orlando Magic, I can't help but talk about one of my favorite players in the NBA and my favorite player on this team, Jalen Suggs. Suggs is looking like the player that the Orlando Magic drafted him to be. He's been a fantastic defender, with his on-off ratings making the Magic's defense about 12 points per 100 possessions better with him on the court. He averages around 2 stocks per game in just 24 minutes, living up to that second team all-defense title. However, it's the offensive side that has really been clicking for him. Maybe it's because of Jamal Mosley, or maybe just the offense as a whole is doing better, or maybe things have just clicked for Jalen Suggs, but he is scoring from everywhere. He is shooting the ball at 89% from within 3 feet. From 3-point range, he's shooting a very solid 37%. 3 percentage points off from a 50-40-90 season. He has the 11th best true shooting percentage in the entire NBA, ranking 3rd amongst all guards. His assist percentage has also taken a pretty big leap, and that could also explain how Orlando's offense is about 8 points better with him on the court. For those keeping track, that means that Jalen Suggs makes the Magic better by about 20 points per 100 possessions when he is on the court. That would put him at 3rd best in the entire NBA, but it's actually his teammate who has the best on-off differential in the entire league, Tristan da Silva. Da Silva has had an incredibly solid year to leap, but he's gotten even better since he's come in for an injured Paolo. In his 5 games as a starter, da Silva has been averaging 14 points, 6 rebounds while shooting 42% from 3. Factoring in his size and his defense, it makes sense that he has the best on-off split in the entire NBA, and in just 1 season, Tristan da Silva has become one of the most valuable role players in the entire league. Starting at the center position has been Wendell Carter Jr., and I'm going to admit he's not exactly one of my favorite guys in the league. I don't think he's anything insane defensively, and so far he's had a career high both in his fouls and his turnovers, which obviously isn't great. However, as of recently, he also does have a good net rating, and he's by far and away having the most efficient year of his career, shooting 43% from 3 on a 65% true shooting percentage, which is absolutely insane, and it's been a huge part in the Magic's offense being better. And backing him up is someone who I think deserves to split time with him is Goga Bitadze. In just his 17 minutes per game, Bitadze is averaging around 6 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 stocks per game, giving him a relatively similar per 36 stats to Wendell Carter Jr. Bitadze is one of the most efficient players in the league. So far this season, he's shooting around 73% from the field, which put him at 5th in the entire NBA. On top of that, about every single advanced stat backs up Goga as being the better player. Now, advanced stats can definitely favor those who play a little bit less, but just in looking at all the advanced stats, looking at the per 36 stats, and just watching the eye test, I really think that he's somebody that deserves minutes, or at least deserves to split his time with WCJ. However, for a team that still needs to shoot the 3 ball and for a team that still needs the spacing, I can see how having a guy who's near 7 feet tall, 43% from 3 is incredibly valuable. And while those guys do make up the main core of the Orlando Magic, there are still a few other players that are worth talking about as they're having really solid years. The first one worth mentioning is Anthony Black. He's had a pretty sizable jump in his 2-point efficiency, and coming off the bench, he averages around a steal and a half per game. In his limited time, Jet Howard is shooting around 42% from 3, and Jonathan Isaac certainly isn't the player that we thought he could have been, but I don't really hate him for a guy who plays just around 9 or 10 points per game. The Minister of Defense is still a pretty solid defender. Possibly the biggest disappointment to this Orlando Magic team so far was a guy that I was super excited about going into the season, and that's Tyus Jones. After a solid year in Phoenix, I really thought Jones could add everything that this Orlando team needed. He's one of the most efficient playmakers in NBA history, does a great job in not turning the ball over, creating offense for others, giving a little bit of scoring, spacing up the floor. He shoots 41% from 3 over the last 2 seasons. But so far, his shooting and just his play overall has fallen off to the point where he's basically played himself out of the lineup. I'm really hoping that Tyus Jones isn't washed and he can go back to the player that we saw him in Washington, or like how we saw him last year in Phoenix, because I think he can be the perfect addition for the Magic coming off the bench. However, if things don't work out for Tyus and the Magic, I do think he could still be a decent trade target. Another team probably could get him at a decent value just because he hasn't really been playing like a rotational player right now, but I do think that there are still some contending teams that he can help out. Maybe the Magic can get a solid rotational player or a draft piece for him. And of course, we have to talk about Paolo. Paolo has had a ton of hype going into the regular season, and that's from myself included. I honestly thought that he was ready to make the All-NBA, or dare I even say an MVP level leap, kind of like what we're seeing from Cade Cunningham this year. But all of Banchero's stats say otherwise. Last year, Orlando went 20-16 without him, and so far they are 4-1 without Paolo, not including the game that he left early against the New York Knicks, in which the Orlando Magic won. So far, he's at a career worst three-point percentage, with his PER, assist percentage, turnover percentage, and box plus minus all taking a step back from last year's promising season. A big criticism on Banchero has been his shot selection and his efficiency, and this is something that has bothered him for a lot of his career. So far in the year, he's shooting just about 33% from mid-range, which is awful at his volume. And it's not uncommon to see Paolo settle for a mid-range shot instead of acting like he's the 6'10", 250-pound player that he is. So you take in the fact that Paolo is having a down year compared to last year, you take in the fact that Orlando was relatively solid without him last year, and you take in the fact that now they're winning games without him, it's led people to think that the Orlando Magic don't really need Paolo Banchero. But honestly for me, in watching this Orlando Magic team and somebody who's believed in Paolo Banchero and just seeing what they were doing last year, I don't think that could be further from the truth. Despite the noticeable slump at the start of the year, he's actually shooting a career high in his true shooting percentage. He's also averaging less turnovers, rebounding better, getting to the line better, and at least he's taking less three-pointers compared to other times in his career. Paolo's never been the world's most efficient player, and it's probably the one thing that I would say is really holding him back from making the next leap, but given the fact that it was only very recent when Orlando started to shoot better, and even then they're still not a league average three-point team, I can't say that Banchero's had a whole lot of spacing to work around. Maybe it's a fault of him, but it's definitely just in how he plays. Paolo definitely needs spacing more than some other players in this league do, and he really hasn't had it until, like I said, the Orlando Magic started to shoot the ball recently. On top of this, Paolo Banchero also has a positive net rating at the start of the season, and he has positive lineups with every single player that I've mentioned so far. And this is something that really surprised me in the making of this video. But did you know the Orlando Magic, yes, the Orlando Magic have the best 5-man lineup in the entire NBA. When Orlando is playing Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Desmond Bane, Wendell Carter Jr., and Jalen Suggs, they have a net rating of nearly 20. In the time that these 5 players are playing together, they are essentially the #1 offense and defense in the NBA. And it makes sense when you look at this lineup. You get a lot of size, you get good rebounding, you have great overall defense, you have that kind of like that playmaker by committee. You have quite a few guys that can shoot, which can help out guys like Wagner and guys like Banchero. It's overall a pretty solid lineup, and we've seen this as they've played over 90 minutes together, and it actually competes with some of the best lineups that the Denver Nuggets and the Oklahoma City Thunder have put out so far. And something I've been wondering about Banchero, and Magic fans can definitely say this better than me, but I also have to wonder if his position has any level of an impact on how he's doing this season. Last year was the best year of his career, and last year he also spent the most amount of time he's ever had at the center position, playing around 11% of his minutes there. This year he's played just 2% of his minutes at the center position, and we've seen a lot of regression from him. It makes me wonder, especially with me personally not being the biggest Wendell Carter Jr. fan, it does make me wonder what Paolo playing a little bit more center minutes would look like. Not a complete center rotation, but just a few more minutes as the big man on the court. With the way that Tristan da Silva is playing in Paolo's absence, that also makes me think that da Silva deserves some time kind of playing in that starting lineup, and we can kind of see maybe an Orlando death lineup with Paolo at the 5, Wagner at the 4, da Silva at the 3, Desmond Bane at the 2, and then Suggs at the 1. At the end of the day though, Paolo Banchero just turned 23 years old. He's got time to get better, he's got time to grow more efficient, and he's got time to continue to gel with the squad that may not have always been perfect for him. With and without Paolo Banchero, one thing about the Magic is clear. This is a brand new basketball team. This is a team that is shooting, playmaking, getting to the line, playing in transition far better than they did last season, all while maintaining their defensive identity. Do not be fooled by the current record, by the current seeding, and by the current ratings of the Orlando Magic. This is one of the hottest teams in the league who have beat and have competed with some pretty legit opponents, and they've done this with and without their best player. We've learned very recently that this is a much deeper team than we thought going into the season, and with Desmond Bane having a massive turnaround, it is doing exactly what many of us thought it would, and it is giving the Orlando Magic huge signs of life, making them one of the deadliest teams in the Eastern Conference right now. That is it for this one. If you liked the video, you know what to do, and I will catch you guys all next time.